Thanks for listening. That clip was video of me tracking some scratch tracks for a song that I've been writing and recording and trying to finish up. Working title is 2 Ton Soul. Don't know if that title will survive by the time it's finished, but thanks for listening to that. I wanted to kind of talk about this video that was pretty thought-provoking for me. If you're a music nerd and you're on YouTube a lot, you probably know who Rick Beato is. If not, if you're interested in how music is made or you're a musician, it's a great channel to check out, particularly his series, like What Makes This Song Great. Really insightful. He was a music producer. Guitar might be his main instrument, but it's not a channel that focuses on just guitar. It's a lot of music theory, stuff about recording. So when he does his videos, it comes with a lot of knowledge. He's like musical Yoda, right? So I love this video. He made this video, Did I Help Ruin Rock and Roll? And this is a subject matter that he's talked about a lot. He's done a lot of videos about that subject, about what happened, what happened to rock and roll, and some of the things that are going on in the music industry now that's kind of making that style of music suffer. He has a lot of educated viewpoints. In other words, instead of just, this new music sucks or whatever, he's got a lot of intelligent insights as to why that might be happening. But anyway, I wanted to talk about this video. I've never done a reaction type video, but that's kind of what I'm attempting to do here, is just talk about the parts of it that meant something to me, things that he said that were kind of resonated to me, and how I grew up with music and what I thought was special about music. And also kind of talk a little bit about some decisions that when you're an old guy like me and making music in your basement and you want it to be authentic and have a feel to it, but yet you have this technology, the kind of decisions that you have to think about and make. But anyway, let's get into this video.
Oh, that's also 99 is when Napster came out. Okay, so as MP3 started taking over, it took the music industry, they just couldn't figure out what to do. So I'm starting to do records as a producer, and I'm getting bands that have major label budgets, but typically beginner bands, okay? An A&R guy would sign a band, and they say, okay, we'll send him to Rick, because I was known as a guy that could help them with their songs, writing them. I could play their parts if need be, if people couldn't play, and I could record and mix the record. Okay, so just give an all-in budget, and I would make the record. So what I started noticing around 2003 or so is that A&R guys, they're the guys that sign records, recording artists. That's what they're called, artists and repertoire. A&R guys started signing people that had singers. That was it. Didn't matter if the band had a good image. Didn't matter if anyone could play. If they could have someone to sing, they'd bring him to someone like me or a number of my friends, actually, that did this, that were writers. And we would write songs for the bands. And it's awful. And then we would fix all of their parts. If they couldn't sing that well, we'd fix their parts. If the drummer couldn't play well, you'd have to fix all their drum parts, everything. They didn't have budgets to bring in studio guys, because what they used to do back in the day is they bring in studio musicians to play. That's why you had people.
All right. Yeah, so I'm going to pause him for a second right there. So, yeah, this is something I've heard about for a while. If you've seen documentaries like The Wrecking Crew, and there's a few others that are like that, where you find out who really played on all these hit songs from the past. It's the talented studio musicians they'd bring in, and it's not really the members of the band that you're hearing on the album or who you'd go to see play. And that's been going on for a long time. And it's interesting what Rick is saying here about that his role as a producer was actually to sometimes, all you really have when you started was someone with an image that could sing. and then you're going to try and create a rock band out of that, right? We see that a lot in pop music, and probably have always had, but usually with bands, we know who these musicians are. He goes on to talk about that, but like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, you think you're buying something from like a recording from a band. You think you're listening and loving the music that the band is making. And, this is something that was really important to me when I was younger. Let's listen some more.
Credited people on records, guys like Josh Freese, who plays with the Perfect Circles on a million records. But they would bring in guys that were not only session drummers, session guitar players to fix parts. This has been going on since the beginning of music. There's some very famous records, with some of the most famous records of all time, that had session players on that are not credited. Okay, I'm not going to say what they were, but yeah, there's some really big records you'd be shocked to had session players on that you think it's the band playing, or maybe it's just one person. So
this is kind of the part of it, that really kind of hits me, right? Is the difference is that they're uncredited.
Hey, Chandler Bolt here. Now, have you ever thought about
ads, that they're uncredited, right? Late 80s, early 90s, there was this Milli Vanilli thing where you find out that they didn't really sing on the album, and there's this whole outrage around it. But yet, I mean, really, there's been some deception in this for going back a long time. I mean, I've heard of like 60s pop rock acts, studio musicians, the Wrecking Crew. There's a great documentary called The Wrecking Crew that you can watch on, I think it's on Amazon or Netflix, but it goes into this. But you used to be able to look at an album. One of the things that Rick says here that really resonates with me is you used to be able to look at an album and you'd see who played on it, right? Even if it was a solo artist, right? You could look at an album and see who the musicians were on a track. And I think your average person doesn't really care about this. They just want it to stream and they want to enjoy the song. And I understand that. I'm not trying to rip on those type of people, but it all kind of goes into this idea of like what happened to rock music, right? But anyway, let's listen some more. I don't know, I'll try and maybe edit out this ad.
Well, this isn't my fault completely. What I started realizing as it went on, the years went on into the late 2000s, and you started getting all these, copy of a copy of a copy new metal bands. That's pretty much what I was doing a lot of. I did singer-songwriter bands, and there were a few great artists that I got to work with. But essentially the A&R people took over the industry, and they were signing people based on how they looked, and they didn't care if they had any songs, because they would hire their friends or people that were signed to their own publishing companies to come in and write the songs for them. And I knew this was wrong. I knew it was wrong, but I also, that was the only way to be a producer in the music business at that time. And I wasn't getting the huge production projects later on. It was only a handful of people that produced all the bands that ultimately, these people would come in and they'd make records, 4 bars at a time. So they would bring in a drummer, they would play 4 bars, they'd quantize it, they'd copy and paste the verses, they'd get the chorus, they'd copy and paste those things. This is where all this beat detecting, hyper quantization came in. They get pro people to come in that would play great parts, and then they would fix their parts. They were obsessed with everything being on grid. That was the thing. Everything being auto-tuned, everything being on grid.
All right. So yeah, this is something that Rick talks about a lot. I say Rick like we know each other. It's like in his videos he talks about a lot. He talks about like what happened to music with the advent of DAW workstations, right? And if you're not familiar with this term, the grid, what it is if you set up a tempo for music, it creates this grid in your recording software. And so you can see all the beats lined up. And if you're playing and it's a little bit out of time, you can quantize that, which means it'll fix it and it'll make all your notes line up in the place that it's supposed to be. Incorrect, bad playing, bad rhythm, bad playing. And this kind of sort of the music, rock and roll wasn't really perfect in the past. And this is something he talks about in a lot of his videos, but this is a big part that really made me want to say something about this as well. But let's listen some more.
But this is what was going on. And this is really what ruined rock music, because it was the era of faceless bands. It was the era of bands where you didn't know the names of anyone in the band. In the 90s, everybody knew the guys in Alice in Chains, in Nirvana, in Pearl Jam, in Stone Temple Pilots, in Soundgarden. In the 80s, you knew all the people that were in Def Leppard, and every big 80s metal band, in Motley Crue. You knew everybody in those bands. You knew the people in Winger, you knew the people in Metallica. Everybody knew everyone in every band that was their favorite band at the time. Now, part of that is MTV, because you saw their faces on here, and you could relate to that. You still had CDs that printed the names of the people in the back, and you would look at those things and memorize them. You even knew the names of producers. You knew Butch Vig, who produced Nirvana. You knew, you didn't know Rick Parasher, that produced Temple of the Dog and the first Pearl Jam record, unfortunately. But that was a big thing, knowing people in bands.
Yeah, no, just wanted to say something about, for me, growing up, always wanting to be a musician, right from my teens on up. I don't know that I knew producers really. I'm like Rick Beato did. But if I heard something that I loved to be able to go and look and know who that was, who played that guitar part, or who played that bass part, or the drum part. And of course, like my favorite bands, I knew who was in the band, and I at least thought at the time I could recognize their playing, right? I could recognize Alex Van Halen's snare sound anywhere, or that clicky sound in the Iron Maiden's, in the Iron Maiden's bass tracks, right? But yeah, I think that's something that's really shifted and has hurt rock music too, is that it being important of this chemistry between musicians, or that who is the bass player is one of the reasons you signed them, right? Or at least part of the soup, right? Or the keyboard player or whatever of that makes it what it is. It makes it great. Let's listen some more.
Bands. And you go back historically in the 70s and 60s, everybody knew the names of everybody that were in their bands. But the era of the early 2000s became what I used to call, even during the time, the era of faceless bands.
Yeah, so a lot of good stuff. If you have a chance to go watch the whole video, or really anything on his channel, it's just a great channel if you love music. But the thing about the parts that I pulled out of the video that resonated with me is just this idea about the way technology has affected music, particularly like rock style music, right? Music that's influenced by blues and country and folk music, in the way technology has kind of pushed us toward perfection, and how there's a lot of that makes things sound good, and then there's a lot of that you lose something. And what that might mean to someone, maybe if you're like me, if you love this sort of trad rock kind of thing, and the great parts of that, but yet, you probably have a job and aren't playing 24/7. You might not have a whole band, or you might not have a whole band full of people that practice 24/7, right? Put in the time it takes to create this sort of earthy, realistic, non-perfect groove that's charming. What does that mean? Now we live in a time, I'm sitting here talking into my laptop, which is also my studio, which can do more than most of the huge, multi-thousands of dollar studio that my heroes had to make music on. And so there's a lot of things to think about. For example, I mean, a lot of I follow a lot of tutorials. I've learned how to use my digital audio workstation recording studio. I've learned how to use that from YouTube videos, and I've also seen other people talk about how they make their videos and they make their music. And it's true, you can record something and you can quantize it, like Rick was talking about, making sure it's on the grid if it's not perfect. You can do an album like four bars at a time. You can just play for 4 bars over and over again, and so you got a good version of the section that is the verse, and then you just copy it all the times you need it, and then you do the same thing for all the other parts of the song, and it goes a lot more quickly. But it doesn't sound the same. It doesn't sound the same as capturing a performance of someone playing all the way through. And this is something that was really important to me when I was coming up. The idea of being able to be the type of musician that could deliver like a great performance live in front of somebody. But that takes a lot of work and a lot of rehearsal, especially if you're talking about playing, if you've got 4 people, so you can play it all at the same time. You have to put a lot of work into making great music. And if you don't have a band, you can't do it all at the same time anyway. Like the music that I make that I've been working on, if it's a song that I've written, I'm programming drums with Easy Drummer 2. Was what I use. I'm writing and playing bass parts and guitar parts and working on vocal parts, thinking about background vocal parts. And I love doing all that stuff. But I can't do all those things at the same time. So it's still a matter of overdubbing, right? For me, one of the biggest reasons I love to play music is the idea of getting better. So if I'm doing things 4 bars at a time, or if I'm auto-tuning them, or if I'm, fixing them with, it's not really Beat Detective, I don't think is a thing. I use Ableton Live, and it can quantize everything. I think every DAW now can just do that. I'm not sure, but I think so. Do I just quantize it and make it quickly, or do I do everything and say I'm going to do it straight through in a take, and I'm going to keep playing it until I get that magic take? And, those are decisions that are difficult to make. I see some young people are like, hey, it's 2020, old man, just tune it, just auto-tune it. Come on, beat detect it. Let's move on to something else. But I do think that there's something missing. So I don't know. That's something that it's hard for me to find my comfort zone with. There's the way I'm doing things now. If I'm recording something where I'm playing the instruments, except for drums, I can't play drums. I just try to make them sound like real drums. And Easy Drummer 2 is a pretty great resource for that if you're someone on the level of musicianship that I'm at, meaning you can't afford the perfect. I think Superior Drummer is way more expensive, and there are better ones. But for me and what I'm doing, it works well. I don't think I have enough knowledge to really probably use something more elaborate, is my point. But for me, a lot of times in the stage that I'm at with 2 Ton Soul, the song that I'm working on that you heard the part at the beginning is I try to lay down scratch tracks, much like what Rick Beato was talking about, this shortcut sort of way. I don't usually quantize. To be honest, I don't really. I know I can do it. I haven't spent any time really doing it because I would prefer to play it. If something's really out of time, I'll just play it again or overdub. But I'll do that. I'll lay out a riff and then I'll put it in there and copy and paste and put it all on there. Then go back and program the drums. The reason being is then I can get an idea. It's a quick way to get an idea of if you like what you're making as far as the songwriting and the arrangement of it. If you think that the chorus goes too long, You can fix those things like just sitting in front of the laptop and hear immediately what they'll sound like. And I really like that. To me, I feel like I can hear, that there's something wrong with that, though. It's parts where it just sounds too much the same, right? The chorus sounds the same again as it did the first time. There's just something that doesn't sound right to me. So when I go track, I do try to play as much as possible all the way through. I'll be honest. That's where the perfection, right? When you know that you can fix something, it's hard to put something out that you imagine like people just tearing it apart. You'd figure there's someone there going, "Oh my God, listen, I can tell in this part that he fretted this chord wrong," or whatever. And you can fix a lot of that in editing, right? You're on the grid. If you take a chunk from a place where you played it right, you can snap it right in over your mistake, and fix it. And I won't say I never do that, but I usually prefer to punch in. I don't know. I don't know if it really seems like if that's really a better option or anything, but it at least feels like I'm playing it something new, right? Like I'm not snatching something. If I can punch in, I'd prefer to do that. Yeah. So, this is a long rambling thing. I don't really do a lot of talking in my videos, or I haven't as of yet. But it's something that I wanted to talk to and also kind of talk to people. If you're listening to this as a fan of music, maybe you're not a musician, and if you've hung with me this far, if you're not, thanks, because I'm sure this is pretty nerdy and kind of boring. But if you are a fan of music, I mean, do you care? I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean, does it matter to you? Is it just the idea of like the people that you listen to, their creativity's coming out, however they make the product is fine, but when it gets to you, if you like it and it sounds good, is that all you need? Or does it matter to you that the person might not be able to play that way, right? To play that perfectly if they were playing to you at a concert, right? If you're a musician, I mean, what do you think? Is it silly to not fully embrace the technology? I know even in my position, I could put out a lot more stuff if I cut and paste everything in my final tracks. In fact, 2 Ton Soul, the song that I'm doing right now, I'm planning to redo. The solo that I just played right there is a place marker. I'm planning to practice it and rehearse it and redo it and try to make it more a consistent performance all the way through, instead of a piece together kind of Frankenstein of it. Am I silly not to save that time and just do the editing and quantize it if I'm playing out of time, or do more editing and that sort of thing? Is it silly to embrace that, or do you think it's worth the effort to take longer to complete something? Yeah. So if you've stayed with me this long and you have an opinion, please comment below. If you make videos and you make songs yourself and you want to share kind of how you do it, I'd be interested. I'm here to learn and get better. Yeah. But again, if you liked this rambling, please like and subscribe. And if you haven't already subscribed to Rick Beato's channel, what are you doing? Go over there. I mean, it's so much information there. It's like more than you could absorb. At least I feel like that. But I always love, when I have time, I love to check out the videos that I've missed, and anything new that Rick Beato puts out is brilliant. But anyway, thanks for listening again. I'm Lonnie Spangler, guitar nerd. Talk to you later. Bye.